I've been involved with Startup Canada for many, many years. And actually, here's a little anecdote that some of you might not know. When I first started eSAX back in 2012, my market was startups. And I almost renamed eSAX as the Entrepreneur Startup Advantage Experience.
Wow.
But I knew Victoria back then, and I knew a little bit about Startup Canada. We had some chats, and I thought they were onto some great things, and I didn't want to step on their shoes. And I changed it after probably a few months to small business, entrepreneurs social advantage experience. Yeah. And we've had great collaboration since. I've helped out with Startup on the Hill. I've hosted some stages there. And this is just continuing the ecosystem. So we have a question from Sue Sutcliffe. Kayla, would you offer to some tips and tricks for success in the ecosystem?
Sue, I almost want to put you up here as an advisor to so many of our entrepreneurs. That's a big question. And I think right now it's just such a challenging time to say, a conventional opportunity. But I loved what you were mentioning up above, Sue, that, that now is really the time for entrepreneurs, that this spirit of entrepreneur or the energy that entrepreneurs bring to the table and the specific skill sets and attitude and energy is what is needed right now. So I think tips right now would really be patience and being gentle on yourselves. I think it's not even practical necessarily at this moment. I think it's leveraging different communities and really leaning on other people, but it's more emotional. I'd say would be the tips and tricks for the ecosystem now of saying, recognizing that this is an unprecedented time and that if you're not coming up with the best business in the world, you're not taking this time to reflect and be strategic, like there are spaces here, but there's also sort of a large emotional toll that's being put on our entrepreneur community. And somebody was also asking about, mental health support. That's something Startup Canada will be actively trying to share and promote and connecting with the Mental Health Associations of Canada and with BDC specifically to provide mental health for entrepreneurs. Because as we know from, just conversations, but also through our census, that, I think it's something like 80% of entrepreneurs feel that if they had to take some type of mental health break or that their health was so compromised that their mental health was compromised, that they would, that their business would suffer because of it. Or that this really sort of overwhelming feeling that you don't have permission to be promoting your mental health or putting your mental health first as an entrepreneur is this really destructive sort of attitude that we see popping up here and there because, it's so competitive and the hustle is real and et cetera, et cetera. But that mental health component, it could not be any more important.
That's a really good point. We have another question from Heather. Kayla, if you were to launch your own business, what would it be and why?
I mean, and we see this at Startup Canada, that so many of our staff are with Startup Canada and then they leave to start their own businesses because they're inspired by this whole world around them.
How about a safari business? Oh, no, wait, you already did that.
Exactly. Safari tour guide. I think that would absolutely be on the list. I have thought about this for years, and as a consultant, sort of working in more that service space, in strategic communications and change management planning, love doing that. I think I would actually start a jewelry business, an earring. I am really passionate about jewelry making. And I think if I was to actually start my own business, it would be in that creative space and something completely different than my sort of experience or current sort of job would prepare me for. So I think that would actually be probably the business that I would begin.
Very cool. Before I get to Jean-Paul's question, Aaron, if you're having some technical difficulties, please refresh your screen. That might help. And Linda, thank you very much for that. You're mentioning you're covering an issue that's being discussed now in April 23. Can you please share your link on the general chat so all of us can see that? Now, Jean-Paul's question is, what about arts angles? Is there something that Startup Canada do to help the artist industry or even those in digital media?
Jean-Paul, did you mean angels specifically within the arts community or arts angles?
Oh, maybe that was a typo.
I mean, either way, but specifically with the art community, I know Startup Vancouver did a really fantastic event that was profiling a panel of artists and entrepreneurs working more in sort of the art world or space as artists, and looking at, I think the conversations were really interesting from what I could capture online. that monetizing the arts and finding a way as an entrepreneur to build a business around your passion seemed to be an immense challenge for this group, but they had successfully showcased how they could build these businesses around the arts. So maybe I can share once I'm done on the presentation side, the feedback from that. For people in digital media, I'd say those funding allocations, Startup Canada does not provide specifically. So we don't issue grants or funds at a large scale. Sometimes we will partner with different organizations. Like last year, we had a Women's Founders Fund. So we did a competitive process to donate some funds from partner organizations to women entrepreneurs. With the Canadian Export Challenge, we have pitch competitions. So artists would be welcome to participate, less so in CXC, but maybe with the Canny Awards, if it had more of a social innovation angle. But I'm trying to think of other specific angel investing groups that specialize in the arts. Nothing is coming to mind at the moment, but NACO could be an organization to partner with. They have a webinar on Thursday, actually, that's talking about angel investing and angels stepping up at this time.
Actually, I can speak a little bit on that. As an artist myself, in Ottawa, there are 2 associations, and I'm sure, Jean-Paul, where you are in Toronto, there might be a couple more, but the Council for the Arts of Ottawa, CAO, and the Arts Ottawa Network, previously AOE, the Arts I don't remember what the previous acronym was, but contact them and see what they might have available for your musical theater radio station. Timothy Laflamme had a great question, or statement rather, talking about the mental health issues that many people and their families are facing. Timothy Laflamme started up a non-for-profit called the Serendipity Group, which specifically is designed to help individuals who can't afford the mental health services. And he's looking for people to get engaged. And he's wondering if Startup Canada might have any resources for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say at the moment, so we started focusing on mental health with our community summit that we did last year. So we brought in, is it CAMF, the Canadian Association for Mental Health, if that's the right acronym, speaking and in partnership with BDC, we did a survey to the membership of entrepreneurs at large and identifying their mental health challenges and getting some stats there. We've also built it into our census, and we're building that out into our strategy for this year. We do have a webinar that's coming up at the end of April, specifically on mental health and resources that can be leveraged. But I think this is such a good point that, a webinar that showcases the challenges that people face is one very small piece of this overall puzzle. We have featured a number of organizations on our podcast, specifically the Thrive podcast, with Snap Clarity, who provides mental health resources and sort of is a digital program that can offer that type of support. So we've connected with them on there, but happy to keep that conversation, Timothy, going to see maybe how we could connect our members to this type of platform. Absolutely.
Well, that's great, Kayla. Thank you so much. At this time, everybody, you can keep asking your questions, but I'm going to invite Sue Sutcliffe up onto the stage. And again, Sue was the one who told me about this platform a few weeks ago. Big advocate for the entrepreneur community in Ottawa. And Sue, let me just send you the invite right now, and you should pop up in probably about 2 seconds.
I'm quick.
Welcome. So, Sue, would you like to say a few words?
Well, thanks, Jared. First of all, thanks for inviting me up here. Nice to meet Kayla face to face. Just love the work they're doing there, and I can't recommend that enough. I've been doing I do coaching, and I've been dealing with a lot of people over the last 5 years. Some of them their businesses have been affected, and I hear that in the chat. And I just like to share that. I just like to share that as much as I know a lot of people's lives are upset right now, totally turned over. It's such a good time to be an entrepreneur. Once you have that muscle, it's so easy to work at, and now is the time to really collaborate, I believe. Whatever you have, like I mean, it breaks my heart. Some of my clients' businesses, they just cannot do what they used to do. And Jared, you mentioned that, and it touched my heart because you seem like such a great guy, and I see all the talent there. But even though your business activities may not be able to continue, I can guarantee with your attitude, your customers all love you. And so, connecting with your customers now, even if you can't serve them with what you used to, you can connect with them and find out what their problems are and solve their problems. And
actually, that's a great point, Sue. I was a presenter, whatever, Wednesday. I don't even know what day that was, about talking about how entrepreneurs can be better positioned in the future for, what all we're dealing with. And something I brought up was intellectual property, a really sexy type of discussion. But all these things that might have gotten lost when you started your business. For instance, this is one of my trademarks.
Oh.
And I used to work in the trademarks office for a year, processing trademarks. It was the most boring job I had, but I lasted a year before I left. But all that to say is I know a lot about trademarks, and entrepreneurs don't realize the value of that. They're so busy on the day-to-day and building the brand and all the social media and everything that comes with it. But that's something that usually gets on the wayside. These are things you could do behind the scenes. Working, everybody says, in the business versus on the business. We all want to work on the business. I'm sure I don't have to tell you guys because you're all business and community leaders in your own right. But I'd be happy to have more of a discussion with that about what you can do behind the scenes to continue the business. But so much of it is about credibility. Sue, you're right. A lot of people know me around the city and maybe through startup chats around the country. But it's how you make people feel, and it's what the offerings you have.
Yeah. And if you think about it, there's never really been a better time for entrepreneurs than now. There's a whole ton of funding. Everybody's struggling. So, it's okay to be authentic. Whereas, in a competitive market, nobody wants to say, hey, I'm having problems right now. And really, as entrepreneurs, we can create our own life. So, it could be that you were doing a business and you were okay and you were happy, you thought you were doing it, you were making money, but now you can do anything you want. And I think honestly, we all need to take that challenge because this is an opportunity and it probably will never come again in our lifetime. I think it's just a really special time. We've got amazing supports, Startup Canada. I don't know about everybody else. The government, I just can't believe the difference in the government in the last, few years, how they've really stood up and actually, stood behind the customer service thing. They're coming out and, so now's a great time. I put an idea in the startup in the chat box about haves and wants. So
yeah, I love that.
So yeah, I think that kind of an idea for entrepreneurs would be kind of cool. So Jared could go, I know a little bit about trademarks because I work there, and I might say I know a little bit about this, and then we could all kind of just chat and exchange, because I think really if you get two entrepreneurs together, you have superpowers.
Yeah. That's a really great reminder, just on that inspiring note. And that's a great reflection for me as well, that I'm almost in this kind of crisis mode of, the world is changing and all these businesses are struggling, and framing that mindset, I think collectively of this is an opportunity, exactly as you say. And people have built this entrepreneurial muscle and spent all of this time, and that grit is embedded into who they are. So acknowledging that is a great reminder, Sue. So thank you.
Yeah, I can't take credit for it, actually. I don't know if anybody's heard the 10 times coach. So Dan Sullivan, my mentor chose Dan Sullivan. So I figure anything good for him is good for me. And I've been following Dan Sullivan for years. And he did a little story about how he used to have people come to him and their businesses had failed. And it really stuck with me because I don't know how many times I've had that conversation with somebody and they just spiral down and it hurts their mental health. And he had a really good way of approaching it, because he said, when you play a game and you start playing it, you don't know very much about the game, and you play the game and you go through the game, and at the end of the game, you lose. Somebody's got to lose. They're going to lose. And the fact of it is, but you're not starting in the same spot. So what we tend to focus on is, okay, oh my gosh, I have to start over. And you're thinking, I'm way down there, but you're not, because all the way along you've acquired that muscle. And so you're actually starting way smarter than you were. So you'll probably have a better foundation. And I love the story he did. And I wish I could kind of quote it, but I can't. It was a long time ago he said it. But I think there's a really good, I think this is a good start time. And I don't think, I've been in business since 92. I think I started my first business in 92. And it was a completely different world then. There was, if you wanted to network with other businesses, you either joined the Chamber of Commerce or the Board of Trade. And that was it. So everything else has come after this, and and I think it's a great time, and I really Kayla, I really love what you guys are doing at Startup Canada, and you guys are kind of a startup too. You're a small company. This is rocking your world too, I'm sure, right? Yeah. So
yeah, actually, that's a great point, Sue. We have another question from Heather. I'm sorry to cut you off, Sue. And then after this, maybe we'll go back into the main lobby so people can break off into smaller networking groups. Because I always want to remember that this is not really, the purpose of these exclusive events was to talk one-on-one with, let's say, the featured guest or those in attendance. But because of the situation we're in, I think this is still a really cool platform to address everybody. So, Kayla, a question for you. This is from Heather. One of the biggest challenges that she's hearing, and I'm hearing this as well, especially if you're looking on social media, Facebook in particular, is the resistance, or people are feeling odd and weird about marketing their services during this time. If you think about it, why would anybody want to make money? Like, they feel guilt for trying to sell right now. Would you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, we are hearing this all over, and especially, and I know somebody was asking about marketing and communication support as well, that people feel really guilty trying to benefit also from this situation of saying, hey, I'm a crisis communications expert. Can I come and advise your organization? That it sort of might feel kind of icky. I think it's really just about how you position your value and in a helpful posture, that this comes down to, comms 101 of making sure that you're identifying your audience challenge, or with, if you're selling a particular product, or depending on the type of business that you have, making sure that it's not tone deaf in how it's being promoted. So I think there's a way to do it and blend it. And maybe, Sue, I can ask you how you're managing that with your clients. But I think the practical realities of our day-to-day, people understand, especially if you're a small business. I think people are exceptionally sensitive that you need to be making money and earning revenue for the sustainability of your business, but also for yourself. And so I think removing that layer and hoping that your community understands that, and in the way that you frame it, that it's connected to that very real sort of practical, this is your life, and you need to pay your bills and keep the lights on. Sue, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, most definitely. I think there's a lot of people that have limiting beliefs around money. And I think everybody, like you're hearing it in the chat, everybody's so stressed about everything. And, at the end of the day, like we do need to have a sustainable businesses, and somebody's got to win to hold us all up. They asked to quote me on something about what one thing I would tell people to do right now. And that is to help people. Look for opportunities to help people, not just your customers. Even if you can't help them with a service, how can you help them, even by just listening to them and saying, hey, what are you doing? Or and I think it's not just your customers, it's all your stakeholders, right? Because we're not, as much as, we're the front end, we have all of our suppliers, all of our contractors, and, together, Canadians are going to get through this. It's just really, they say the second quarter is going to be horrible. And the third quarter, we're going to make a little bit better. But by the fourth quarter, this is going to be old news. So it's just getting through a little bit of time and working together and figuring out how we can help each other. And Jared, you've been awesome at that, bringing us all together. So thanks for that.
Oh, well, thank you, Sue. I mean, I was talking a couple of days ago, I don't remember who it was, about, how do I still stay in business? And I, much like you were suggesting, Sue, get in touch with your suppliers, your contacts. And I brought up the 80-20 rule. For those of you who probably know it, 80% of your business likely comes from about 20% of the clients. Call those people up, send them a letter in the mail. Remember the postal service? It's still around. Use it. People like to get letters, but people like to get a call these days. Somebody called me on the phone today, and I said, what's this paperweight doing on my desk? and he had a good laugh. But now's a great time to do that, because like business, like networking, it's relationships. And now more than ever, people have that isolation need, and now's a great time to do that.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely.
Okay.